Hi, I'm Katya, one of the horticulturists here at Rogers Gardens, and today we're going to cover Tillandsias, which are mostly famously known for the name air plants. How did they get the name? Pretty much they're able to absorb nutrients and water very easily through their leaves, through these kind of, they're like hair-like little strands on their leaves. They're not obvious, they're microscopic almost, but pretty much that's how they absorb all of their necessities. Pretty much today I'm going to be covering maintenance. I'll probably cover, maintenance and care. That's like the general thing we're going to cover today. So to start off, how do you care for these guys? It's a little different from regular houseplants where they're usually sitting in soil. They actually don't. They're a part of a group of plants called epiphytes. So epiphytes can usually either perch up on trees or plants that are larger than themselves and kind of grow like, I guess, a mini family pretty much, because with these air plants specifically, they typically will just stick on a tree or something and then they'll reproduce and create pups. So that's how they work. Bromelias, orchids, staghorn ferns, monsteras, philodendrons. There's actually a lot of these plants that are a part of that epiphyte family. They just work a bit differently. I think staghorns and air plants are the only few plants or plant families that are able to absorb through their leaves. Every other plant usually can't. They do have to use their root system to do so. So for these guys, if you want to actually water and care for them, the hard thing is we're in Orange County, so none of us really live in an area that is very tropical and humid, so you typically have to water them yourselves. And if you intend to fertilize, which I don't really recommend for these guys because they typically don't need to. If you really want to though, usually just make sure that fertilizer has a high nitrogen number, because that's probably the most important thing. Ooh, sorry, our speaker's a little funky today. But pretty much, if you do want to fertilize, let's say that you see them a little sad, or maybe you actually want it to go into bloom, which typically doesn't happen in most homes since they're not going to be the exact perfect conditions for them to reproduce that way. But if you want to do that, just make sure the nitrogen number is up. And you usually can either get the spray version that you kind of spray onto the leaves, or you could get the liquid version that you throw into the water bowl that you will dip your plants in when you're giving it a watering. So that's actually the next thing I'm going to get into, where I'm pretty much going to show you that you pretty much, we'll get a smaller one here. You'll get your air plant, and to water it, you're just going to dunk it in a bowl that completely submerges it and kind of leave it there for 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes if you get busy, you're doing chores, you can leave it there for like at most an hour. I wouldn't do it for longer than that because that can risk root rot if you're not careful. And when I say root rot, it's technically not even the root system, it's the plant itself. Once it is done being submerged, you are going to bring it up. You can either hang it and kind of let gravity bring out all the water, or you could just place it on a mat and let it dry out for a few hours. Make sure it is completely dry, because if they're not, at some point, like within the next few weeks of you consistently watering it, you will see that it's starting to rot, and that's because most of the water didn't come out. And you really want to avoid that, because just like any other plant, they can deal with they'll deal with the rot. Like with regular plants, I believe you get root rot, and that's because it's been sitting in water for too long. So same exact thing with air plants. Another thing to keep in mind is lighting. So people assume since they don't have soil or don't have to be watered consistently, they also don't need enough light, and that's actually very false. With Tillandsias, you definitely actually want to put it in a very bright location. Nothing super direct, but bright enough where it's like by a window. If you don't, they usually tend to suffer as well, and that actually makes it harder for them to dry out. Like let's say if you perch it or mount it somewhere while it's drying, it actually won't benefit from it. So they actually do prefer a lot of bright light. So if you notice that your Tillandsia is kind of struggling, maybe move it to a brighter location. They can tolerate low light, but they really, really prefer the same lighting conditions that most plants want. So there's that here. I think of anything else that we need to cover. So we have lighting, fertilizing. I think that's really it. Decorating, it's not much to it, but you could always place them in a multitude of things. You could throw them in terrariums. You can, I forgot the name of these guys, but you could throw them in here. We even sell like rings like this for them, but they're so easy because you kind of just dump them once a week, dry out, do their thing, and then now you have a plant that is super low maintenance and doesn't require to be either watered consistently or having a humidifier like nearby it at all times, because it actually doesn't struggle like that. So that's the great thing about these guys, and it's a really good starter plant if you're considering getting a plant but you really don't want to deal with the soil because it's messy. This is like the perfect plant for you. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, right now is the best chance to do it.
How often do they need to be soaked?
So once a week, technically. If you notice that it's drying a lot quicker than usual, or that it's starting to shrink and kind of wrinkle, that means you might have to bump up the watering, and sometimes you could actually mist your plant, which I don't usually recommend because most plants don't absorb water through their leaves, but with the exception of stagmoras and these guys, you could definitely do that. That's it. Okay, but that's it for me, and I just wanted to let you guys know to follow us at the Greenhouse RG on Instagram. Also connect with our emails. You can find lots of cool updates that way, and we also have an event this weekend on the 14th of this Saturday. It's going to be our very first plant swap, so be sure to come and visit us there, and we'll have a lot of cool vendors. I'll be there, and if you guys have any questions, I can always answer them there too. Have a good one.